Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 462 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week. Kicking things off with the owner of MTG Goldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Excited. We have several shakeups happening to the metagame here.
Yes, Christmas came early this year. It's not Christmas yet, but we got a bunch of bannings to talk about. But before we get into that, we got another co-hosted Krim. Good morning, Krim. How are you today?
Morning. I'm actually kind of a little sore today. I think this is back-to-back weeks where I've come back from a
conference.
We're
mashing again, Krim.
Krim. Yeah. Last night it was really fun. I went to go see the Menzingers and Microwave, so that was fun.
Nice. Well, today our big topic is bannings. We had the BNR update. We have 5 cards banned, and then also a Pauper banning. So 6 cards if you count Pauper banned. In a card, I guess one of those was unbanned, but a bunch of changes. That's what we're talking about today. So that's our big topic. We might hit up a couple of smaller topics if we have time. Some Ravnica Remastered news, a little thing from Mark Rosewater's blog, maybe some fish mail, but bannings are what we are starting with. Before we get into it, though, a reminder that today's show has been brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, Card Conduit lets you skip them. You can use their curated service and send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use their sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. And no matter which one you choose, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once the order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. Also, we have some new merch, right, Richard? If people want to check out the new merch, how do they go about doing that?
Well, you can go to MTGGoldfishmerch.com. We have a new Scoops drop. You can get signed tokens by the Command Clash crew. We spent our Vegas doing very fun things. So yeah, check out MTGGoldfishmerch.com for the new merch.
Anyway, let's get to this BNR. So the BNR just dropped like an hour ago as we're recording this. No changes in Standard, but Pioneer, Modern, and Pauper, and of course Explorer, because that's the same as Pioneer, all got changes. Richard, why don't you let us know what actually changed, and then we'll delve into these formats.
All right. So Modern, Fury, and Up the Beanstalk banned. In Pioneer, Karn and Geological Appraiser banned. Also in Explorer, they're banned. Unbanned Looter Scooter Smuggler's Copter, only in Pioneer. So only Pioneer legal. And then in Pauper, Monastery Swift Sphere is banned. So we'll go through the formats one by one. Modern. So the jury's out. The people who died for the sins of Modern Horizons is Fury and Up the Beanstalk. What do you guys think about this?
So good. These changes are good. These are 2 cards that I made a top 5 list. I did a short of it. Of the 5 cards that I thought were most likely to get banned, these were 2 of the cards high on that list. Fury was number 1. I think Up a Beanstalk was like 3 or 4. So these are 2 cards that I think being gone will have a positive impact on the meta. Hopefully Fury being gone frees some smaller creature decks. Up a Beanstalk, the value engine is just like too intense to keep up with. And as I mentioned in the article, very hard card to deal with profitably because it cantrips when it ETB. So even if you have an answer, you're still behind, kind of the Fable of the Mirror Breaker thing. Like even if you deal with it, you're still behind. So I think these changes were good. Although honestly, I thought they might ban more. I am very surprised that Orcish Bowmasters wasn't banned. That is a big, I'm starting to wonder, like, do you think it's possible they have some contract with the Lord of the Rings people that they like can't ban their cards for a certain amount of time or something? Like, it's wild to me that Lord of the Rings keeps dodging. No matter what, the Lord of the Rings cards don't go. So good changes, but I was kind of hoping for even more changes. What do you think, Krim?
I like that Fury ban. I'm kind of surprised, like you had mentioned, that there's not more. Mostly just because I was waiting to see almost like I think Fury and Grief should have gone, right? So just like I don't know, the elementals. I mean, I would have just done the whole cycle for the for the hell of it, right? Like just like get rid of all of it, and I I guess the Beanstalk makes sense because, yeah, like, I mean, Beanstalk was pretty disgusting. However, with most of the elementals gone, I thought you wouldn't have had to have banned Beanstalk because what else is left, right? Leyline Binding that would trigger it. That's like played currently, and maybe Murktide or Murktide Tidebinder or whatever. But like that's not played in the same deck. So I like the bannings. I like the bannings. Fury is pretty rough. And I'm okay with all the Lord of the Rings cards. So I thought Orcish Bowmasters, all that could have stayed.
What do you think, Richard?
Okay, so to answer Seth's conspiracy theory, it's not that they have a contract with Lord of the Rings. Maybe they do, but it's like, does Wizards have a contract to make money? The answer is actually yes, because they're beholden to the shareholders and obligated to make money, right? But
Holiday edition.
Holiday edition Lord of the Rings, it's the chase set of the year. You can't be banning cards from here. But if we want to talk about cards adjacent to the cards being banned, Up the Beanstalk draws lots of cards. So does the One Ring, right? The One Ring, should have been up for debate. Orcish Bowmasters also gatekeeps little creature decks. Don't worry, it's protected by plot armor, Lord of the Rings. So I like the Fury ban. I don't think anyone's gonna complain about that. The Grief ban, I think, is a huge miss. I feel scam players are gonna keep scamming, and I feel you're gonna keep hating Modern because of it. Before we ended up here, remember we had like the Orzhov Stoneblade scam decks.
Yep.
Right, and I'm sure like people will find some other substitute to scam in instead of the Fury. Like if we scam Solitudes, are people upset? I don't know. So there's that still happening, which I think is just a bad play environment. I don't like Up the Beanstalk. I mean, I get it. It's their easiest way to fix this, but how about they just fix all the spells that abuse it rather than kill Up the Beanstalk? Because there are other offenders here, like Leyline Binding can go. I'm not particularly pleased, it doesn't need to stay here. The other elementals, like Krim mentioned, like Solitude still triggers. So you could have still played the Beanstalk deck without the Fury because you had Leyline Bindings, Solitudes, and all these other cards that cheat mana. So it's something, but you're still gonna get like people. I don't know. Most people didn't complain about getting Furied on turn 1 or turn 2 because most people aren't playing Soul Sisters. Okay, most people are complaining because they're getting triple Thoughtseize out of the gate, and this does not address that. So your only hope is Scam's power is so reduced without the Fury that people won't try to triple Thoughtseize you. But I feel people are gonna continue to do it. Like I feel scam players will find a way to scam something else, and then we're gonna get triple Thoughtseize on turn 1 again.
I mean, we already have. It's not as high tier as the Rakdos scam decks, but like Mono Black Scam is a legit deck. That's a deck that people have like posted winning results in. You mentioned Orzhov. That's kind of where scam started with Ephemerids and Solitudes and Orzhov. So I don't think this solves the scam problem, right? Like I think scam, like it solves the Rakdos scam problem. I don't think there's really an incentive or as much of an incentive to be Rakdos. But if you want to like get people to grief on turn 1, I think you can still do it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. I think Mono Black certainly gets a lot more appealing. You just like scam your griefs, and then you got like Duthi Voidwalkers, Sheoldreds. Orzhov could be good. So I don't think scam's dead. Does Up a Beanstalk, how much does that change? So here's the weird thing about the Up the Beanstalk banning to me. So yes, you did kill one of the value engines, but you still got the One Ring, right? Like, it's not like all of a sudden there's fairness. Like, before Up the Beanstalk was printed, the big issue was like, oh my God, the One Ring is just this crazy value engine. And then they printed Up the Beanstalk. So now you have 2 crazy value engines. So now we just have 1 crazy value engine, right? So, like, does this actually solve the problem? Or does, instead of cascading into Beanstalk, we just see 4-color Omnath with the One Ring, like, rise back up to where it was pre-Beanstalk and be like the number 2, number 3 deck in the meta?
I think it's exactly that situation, right? Like I think that I could see Orzhov coming back, right? Orzhov now, like just being like I don't know, Mono Black may not be enough, but I think Orzhov definitely could come back for some scamming. I don't know though. It's Fury was really good because Fury checked numerous X1s, I'll admit. So like Fury was that good, and Fury also was a double striking body, Whereas, like Solitude is just a 3/2 with like lifelink or something like that.
Yeah.
But regardless, the whole free play, like free spell aspect of it has just been kind of rough. So I'm just surprised that not all of them are gone. Not all the elementals are gone. So I think that's, I don't know. We'll just have to see, because I think Orzhov is going to be the next runner-up for scamming.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Fury is critical to scam because in a non-interactive matchup, you just drop it down as this like turn one double striker thing that like just wrecks your opponent. And if they don't have the right interaction, like exile-based interaction, they can't even remove it. Like if they try to terminate it and then you play all your scam cards to bring it back, and then you just like smack them to death. So it was a clock, and it's something that Orzhov like doesn't have. Like it doesn't have like an equivalent clock to end the unfair matchups, because the problem is you grieve someone on turn one and then they just like top deck into their creativity and kill you. Like you actually needed some kind of clock to dispatch for them. 4-color Omnath also plays Fury. So I don't, maybe you can go back to the good old days of Omnath, but it takes up the beanstalk, and it also takes the Fury eaten, out of the deck. So I don't know if it's still a deck, but it was always that fair deck that punished other fair decks that you could not beat it because of the value engine. Just up the beanstalk, just cranked it to the next level. But Omnath will probably still exist. The real question is the return of X1s? Question mark? Like, are
No.
Soul Sisters back?
No.
Like
No.
we're saying Fury gatekeeps X1s, but Ren and 6 still in the format.
Bowmasters.
Bowmasters still in the format. Fire Ice still in the format. Like Fire Ice actually like wrecks your stupid like 2 X1s, right? Because you can split the damage. So there's still a lot of things hostile to X1s. Are we playing Soul Sister, Seth? Are you doing it? Is this the time?
Is Electrolyze unbanned?
I'm skeptical.
Electrolyze, that's a good one.
Oh, that's old school. That's like 2015 modern. Electrolyze, untap Sphinx's Revelation, the good old Jeskai control deck. I'm skeptical. Like, I would love to see X1s be more playable, but as far as solving the X1 problem, to me, this feels kind of half-measury. If they had hit Fury and Bowmasters, I would be much more like, okay, I could see X1s making a comeback. I think Bowmasters is still a really, really big disincentive to play X1s. We'll see. If you read WotC's announcement, their thinking is, if we get rid of Fury, we get rid of Rakdos Scam. If we get rid of Rakdos Scam, that'll reduce the number of Bowmasters that are seeing play. You're not going to run into Bowmasters as much because that's one of the decks that play it. Bowmasters, though, shows up in a lot of decks. It's in many decks. It's in Yogg. It's in Mono Black Coffers. It's in Domain Zoo decks. Whether or not WotC's theory, do you think it'll work, Richard? Like, does that logic add up? Because right now I was looking at our current metagame data, and you got Fury at almost 50% of decks. Next best creature, as far as metagame percentage, is Bowmasters at just under 40%, like 37%. Does this number come down a lot thanks to the Fury banning? Is the idea of like, oh, we get rid of Fury and then we'll also minimize the impact of these cards? Does that hold up to scrutiny, you think?
Kind of. So if Scam is 20% of your metagame, if you look at the staples, it's going to be overrepresented by Scam. So any playable card in Scam is going to show up there. So yes, that will happen, but we also know Bowmasters is a good card in multiple archetypes. So I don't know if it's going to do what Wizards wants, because if all those other archetypes rise up because Scam is gone, Bowmasters just kind of keeps its position. But I don't know. Like we were talking earlier, Seth. Like I played Bowmasters in Jund, and Bowmasters kind of sad if opponents not popping off drawing cards. And not a lot of decks just like raw, straight up draw a lot of cards. So I don't know if it's a problem, because it's sad when you're not picking off X1s. It's kind of like Ren and 6. Like Ren and 6 on steroids if you're picking off X1s. If you're not picking up X1s, it's like, it's okay. Like Bowmasters as a 2-drop is a grizzly bear. Like that's 2 power. If you're not picking off anything, like that is not a clock, right? It's not doing anything for you. So you really need to be picking off things and like getting your opponent with it for it to be good. So I actually don't think it's that bad, but I don't know. You guys, Seth seems to really like Bowmasters.
Well, but at the same time, we just don't have X ones in the format, right? So it's kind of like it's done its job. It's just like pushed anything, any birds of
Fire and
paradise
ice
out of the
I think
meta.
It's fire and ice.
I don't think there's one thing that like you can ban where X ones are all of a sudden free.
Fire and
Yeah.
ice. So to me, the problem is not one X1 dies. It's all of your X1s die, right? So like
Yeah.
Bowmasters come down pings. If you don't draw another card, you're kind of safe. But like Ren and 6, Fire and Ice. Like if you mana dork into mana dork and get like Fire and Ice, it's like over. You get Fury, it's over, right? So it's this kind of like repeatable thing of like X1 killing. So like we just mocked Electrolyze, but I think the fact that people play Fire and Ice for like the other mode to like basically time walk you, and then they just randomly hose like Soul Sisters.
Yeah.
I think is kind of a problem.
It's a tough year to be a Soul Sisters player, that's for sure. It's so funny to me that like, if I'm remembering this right, they changed the mana value rule on split cards to nerf Brain in a Jar of all things, because people were like cheating the fuse cards into play with Brain in the Jar. And because of that, now all the Cascade decks get to play things like Fire and Ice. So like the unintended consequences of that rules change to solve the crisis with Brain in the Jar actually ended up having like such a huge impact on the format. Is there any way, like, rather than, I don't know, you go after up the beanstalk, which makes sense, but does that actually solve the problem? Isn't the problem at some point Cascade? Like, isn't that the issue? Because like, how much different is it than Living End or Crashing Footfalls or any of these other decks that are doing like kind of the exact same thing? Like Footfalls technically has a higher metagame percentage than Cascade Beanstalk right now. It's the number 2 deck. That goes completely untouched. It's still playing the Fire and Ices. It's got all the Cascade spells. Like, I don't know. Would it have been better to try to find a way to just like cut off the Cascade into something, a 3-mana Cascade into something plan rather than ban the things you're trying to Cascade into?
I think that unfortunately that mechanic you have that mechanic is seen as a cool, fun thing to do, right? It's the combo, right? Like
No, what kind of combo is that?
I don't know. I mean, I personally think that like I would like to see it all go, but they would have to just literally ban a million cards, right?
They just ban all the Cascade cards.
I think
so. The problem with Cascade is that it is the most overrepresented broken mechanic. If you look at the top decks, right? Like Scam uses the reanimation spells. That's its own unique mechanic. Footfalls is a Cascade deck. Beanstalk is a Cascade deck. Yogg uses the Undying abuse. Amulet Titan abuses Amulet. Murktide abuses its graveyard. Hammer Time is just low curve aggro. And then again, Living End shows up. So we have 3 of the top archetypes abusing Cascade. And there's only like 3, 4 playable Cascade cards. One of them is not represented here, Ardent Plea. But although there have been some, I guess, Beans decks in those colors. But
yeah.
Charlotte's Agent, I don't even know what they're called. The one with the purple dudes. That's an
violent outburst.
Violent
the purple dude.
Violent outburst.
Demonic.
You
That's
don't even hear what they do. Except once in a while, you do get by the pump of Violent Outburst. But like, it doesn't even matter what the text on the card is.
It's just Cascade.
Like,
3-mana
Cascade.
Cascade.
Speed Cascade coming at 3 mana. I'm dead. Oh wait, there's another one coming. That's like on a creature. I'm dead. So like that's the problem. Just hit those like 4 cards, 3 cards, whatever, and Cascade is dead. Like, if you want to go to 6 mana to Cascade, by all means, whatever, right? Like, play whatever unplayable jank at that point. But just kill all 3 mana Cascade.
Even Bloodbraid's fine. Like, I think even the difference between 3 and 4, I think would make it much, much harder to build, like, an actual functional deck. You lose a decent amount of stuff. Like, you can't Tishana's Tidebinder anymore. You can't Flame of Andor anymore. You can't Force the Negation anymore. Like, if you up that by 1, I think it would have a huge impact. So that would be something I would like to see Wizards look into, rather than like banning all the things you Cascade into one by one. But I don't know. I guess Wizards must really like the Cascade mechanic.
What if we try to be cute and just hit Violent Outburst? So it reduces the number of Cascade spells you have, but it also reduces the 1 instant speed Cascade spell you have. So like that's the I don't know.
That would
Ban
help.
Stinkweed Imp, but keep the other thing, like keep
It
the
is-
other dredgers and try to let them power through it.
That could actually work. The instant speed aspect of that is super obnoxious. So if you had to downgrade from like Violent Outburst, that would really mess with Teamer Rhinos because you'd have to go into like a whole nother color to get your second Cascade spell. You could play Shardless and then you'd have to go into like black for Demonic Dread or white for Ardent Plea. Plus, like not be getting blown out at instant speed would really power it down. I kind of just am sick of the Cascade play pattern, so I'd be fine with getting rid of all of them. But that is an interesting idea. I could see Violent Outburst being enough by itself if we just got rid of that.
I don't think I actually ever knew what the artwork of Violent Outburst is after Richard
one with
told
the
me.
purple guy.
The purple
Yeah.
guys coming to stab. It's
One
like the
with the-
Toneberries. You're like, I'm
Well,
gonna get caught in it.
they are Tonberries, dude. Oh my god. I didn't know there were 3 purple dudes.
Just
I
remember,
realized
sometimes
this.
Rhinos kills you by hitting you with 2 Rhinos and pumping them by +1/+0. Like that text is relevant.
That is, yeah, I've been blown out by it. I definitely have. So, Richard, you play a decent amount of Modern. How much different does the meta game look today? Like, so obviously Scam is gone. You're not going to cascade into Beanstalks. You're going to cascade into whatever, Crashing Footfall, Living End, make your pick. Like, is the meta wholesale different? Are we going to see Soul Sisters, all these X1 decks come up? Or is it kind of like the same meta, but without those 2 decks?
It's probably the same. Can Soul
Yeah.
Sisters beat any Cascade deck like ever? Like
No.
you're still so to me, Modern was really like random rogue decks, which I can't classify. There's like too many of them. Some kind of like Titan deck, which is always like Amulet Titan, and then some kind of Cascade deck, and then the rest were just random, and then Scam, right? And then the rest were like random things that you just hope you had some kind of answer and knew what the deck actually did. But I feel, I don't know, dude. Is Footfalls how much Fury? They barely play Fury. Like Fury's not
Yeah.
a big thing. Like they don't
Sideboard
care.
card mostly. Yeah, so it doesn't
Living
hurt
End didn't care.
Football.
Titan didn't care. Beanstalk didn't care. I think it's gonna feel the same.
I mean, I would assume, right? Like Footfalls is good, Yogg is good, Primeval Titan decks are good, Murktide's kind of back. Like, so I feel like maybe
is Coco
maybe-
back? Like I feel Coco. Is it just like Powercraft out? But like that's the deck that plays lots of X1s.
Yeah.
Or could, I guess. Like, is that somehow back? Is Elf Ball, Soul Sisters?
It helps.
Did humans get wrecked by Fury? Where'd humans go?
Humans does get pretty wrecked by Fury. Like, I think all those decks improve. And maybe they improve enough to be like part of the meta. I would be surprised if we saw humans or a deck along those lines jump up to be like top tier, but maybe you can play them again. Maybe they're one of those like rogue decks that you see occasionally now rather than like straight up not existing, which is pretty much where they've been recently. So I think it helps. Like, Fury is the biggest defender. Yes, Bowmasters. Yes, Ren and 6. They also punish those small creatures, but Fury was the worst, right? It's kind of like a free wrath almost against those small creature decks that sometimes just like kills you with the scam plan. So I think it does help. I don't know. I'm not convinced we're going to see those decks become legit top tier options, but I do think they improve. They improve enough that I'm going to try them. Are you going to try one, Richard? Would you jump into?
Oh,
like,
you are brave.
Soul
If you all of a
Sisters?
sudden
Richard
decided
Soul
you wanted
Sister
to play
League?
elves.
We're good.
I was thinking of Coco decks because we were talking about Lavinia last week, but I'm
Yeah.
like, it's so you can't kill anyone with like dorky creatures. Like most people just Coco into a combo and win.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel the problem is these Cascade decks, and you still got to beat them. And the best way to beat them, in my opinion, as a Jund player, is to thought seize them, like try to get one turn off of them and then kill them before they get there. So I would actually just try another Scam variant now. Now that Scam is no longer cool, I can go play Scam.
Hipster
I'll
scam.
try
Yeah.
like now it's hipster Scam. So now we can try like Orzhov Scam. We can try some red unplayable card that will replace Fury. And like I don't know how many percentage points you would lose. And I think we just got to salt out the R&D team until they just like give up and don't want to get griefed on turn 1. Because I feel the fundamental problem is there. Like grief still exists, and you don't want to get thought seized out of the game. So we just got to keep doing it until they ban grief.
But remember, like again, grief was also just like another 3/2 or something like that. Fury's double strike is something that is just, it
It's a
may not
clock.
make sense, but like it does close games. That's just
Yeah.
6 damage in a 15 life format.
Yeah, but now you just got to sit there for like 6 more turns with no cards in hand while they beat you down with a 3/2. Fury was an act of mercy in the
win
scam
that.
deck.
In Modern, you'll win that.
I
Like,
think you
Delver
could
is
win
not
that
a
in
real
Modern.
clock anymore, but the Fury is usually 8 power, or not 8
Yep.
power, but 4 power, so double strike 8. That's a 3-turn clock.
Yep.
Could be as low as 2 turns if you have decided to fetch your shock to do something.
Yeah.
Like maybe try to like fetch shock removal and then get got by a scam card, but that was a real clock. So
That's
I don't
true.
know what's another thing you could cheat in that's an actual clock.
In
Nothing's
red?
comparable. That nothing.
Anything in all of Magic the Gathering. It can be any color, right? Because you can be black anything.
I
Free
mean,
rhinos.
and it needs to be like a cheap evoke cost essentially, or some similar mechanic. I don't think there's anything like Fury that exists. Even just a clock. Even if you disregard the ETB like damage, I don't think there's anything else that replaces it. So maybe, I mean, I will
Then
say
it becomes like a Jund variant. So the difference
Yeah.
between Scam and Jund is like it had a real clock, right? So you could actually close the game after you thought ceased to be full. So maybe it just becomes the power level of Jund. No one plays it, and problem solved. I think that's what Wizards is going for. Like it's just so bad now that no one plays it. But the mono black variants, I don't know if there are other variants.
What does mono
lurking
black
around.
do?
I
That's
mean,
like
mono
what-
black.
that Copper's deck, or no?
Yeah, like
No,
what
there's
does
there's
that
mono
give
black.
it?
So mono black scam. Sometimes they play a little like 8-rack style package, but it's mostly like Bowmaster's Voidwalker Grief, the scam stuff, a couple of Shieldrids, and the good black removal and whatnot, and then hope for the best. But so that's modern. I will say, I will give Wizards credit. If there was only going to ban one card, it had to be Fury. So they got that right. I would have liked to see more on the ban list, but this is going to, I haven't played Modern in like the last month. I've just been waiting for something to change. I've just been bored of it. So this is going to get me back to playing the format. So we'll be playing it soon. Look on the YouTube. We'll have a video, hopefully maybe by the end of this week up, checking out the new format. So it's done enough to lure me back into the format. But we also got big changes in Pioneer. What do we think of these bans in Unban? So Richard, refresher, what happened in Pioneer again?
So Karn, the great creator, banned. Geological Appraiser banned. That's a new card, by the way. Like it broke every that was Quintorius combo. And then
Well, Quintorius just got cut entirely as it evolved. And
There's a
just
couple
realized-
different-
they didn't even
Yeah.
bother with Quintorius. Okay, so yeah, that's a new card. That's a Discover card, Discover 3, that's banned. And then Smuggler's Copter unbanned. Like, I don't know. We needed Smuggler's Copter. Why was it banned to begin with? But okay.
I mean, it was very good in multiple decks, right? Like it could go in any kind of aggro deck, but I guess aggro isn't even on the menu anymore. So
The world was so different. It was banned like, remember when they first lost Pioneer, they did the like weekly banning thing, like give us your
Yeah.
feedback and we'll like ban things weekly. It was one of those like in the first month or something of the format. In mono black aggro was the #1 deck in Pioneer at the time, and it played 4 copters, and it was just like play my black recursive 1-drops and attack you and like wrangle you or whatever. And that was like the best thing going, so they ended up banning it, and that deck doesn't even exist anymore. I'm actually really hyped about Copter ban. This might be an unpopular opinion, but is Copter even good anymore in Pioneer? Like, do you
mono
think this
black
card's
aggro,
even-
it's back.
It's back to tier 3. It's doing
back
it.
back to tier 3. I don't even. So the thing here is, I don't think that Pioneer cares too much about Copter right now.
Yeah.
But we'll see, right? Like Karn is unbanned. Karn is
Oh,
banned,
thank
so
you.
our artifacts, like maybe they're kind of like good again. Personally, I've lost to just Nykthos. I'm surprised they just somehow Nykthos. I don't know who at Wizards loves Nykthos this much to where it manages to dodge. It's not even in the conversation. It's just like, yo,
Yeah.
Nykthos.
No, they
is
never
so...
even bring it up.
Yeah, like Nykthos is just like, oh, cool, yeah, just swept under the rug. But I'm like, dude, Nykthos is the biggest offender. Sure, you want to ban Karn? That's fine. But like, I think that is just a symptom of Nykthos. I think that card is what mono green is going to dumpster you with. It doesn't matter what you have in place of Karn. Like a ham sandwich is fine. They'll beat you if they have all the excess mana. So that's the main thing for me. And I think that Copter, sure, throw it into the mix. Why not? I don't think it actually does anything for right now. It might be okay. It might be okay, but like, the one thing I am surprised of out of all of this, outside of Nykthos managing to yet again survive another BNR, is Geological Appraiser. Not that like I'm that is a correct that is a correct assessment. I think getting rid of that card is correct. However, I'm surprised they actually did it. Just because of how new that card is. Right? It's very, very new. It's only been like 2 weeks or so, like what, 3 weeks?
Yeah.
It's
Lost
uncommon
Cavern?
to him. They're
Yeah,
like, wait, you cut Quint to play this? Hold on. We need our mythics to make some sales. Get this uncommon out of here. Quint's back on the menu.
I don't even know that the Geological Appraiser deck is that good. I still have not become convinced that it's actually that good. I have really mixed feelings on that banning, actually. I think it's like one of the worst decks to be banned in Pioneer because it isn't like dominating or putting up consistent results. Like, yeah, the first weekend when no one knew about it, it performed really well. But since then, it's been like kind of medium to not even that great, like a second or third tier deck. On the other hand, it's just a miserable play pattern, right? It's just like the often like turn 3 removal check. Make a treasure on turn 2, Geological Appraiser on turn 3. Either you kill it at instant speed or it's going to combo off and kill you. So I think just based on the play pattern, it makes sense that they would get rid of it. But I actually think the deck itself is still like pretty like it's kind of like Greasefang. It's like Greasefang except it doesn't care about the graveyard. You can't get it with graveyard hate, but it's like similar. Like either you got removal or you don't got removal on turn 3.
Removal is a lot easier to deal. I'm like I would say removal because it eats it. If you have a ton of removal, it makes it somehow worse than I think Greasefang. Greasefang is a bigger offender than that.
So WotC doesn't want this to be a turn 3 format without removal. So their justification is without some form of interaction, players can lose the game as early as their own second turn. This doesn't meet our long-term vision for the format where players can blah, blah, blah. If every deck must run 1 or 2 mana interaction spells, the format shrinks. So they don't want you to be able to pop off, at that early. And they don't want people to have to run like interaction spells for you just to prevent you from popping off that early. So that is the gist of
Greasefang. What about Greasefang? Like, isn't Greasefang the same thing, Krim? Like, if you don't have instant speed interaction on your turn 2 and they're on the play, you just die.
Yeah, you're pretty much just dead. Like I don't know.
You should send this revelation to Wizards.
I mean, I do agree. I do agree with the philosophy, and I'm glad they banned Geological Appraiser. But it is surprising to me just because usually they wait till a card really dominates for it to be banned. But I like that they're trying to manage the format based on something more than just win percentage. And they didn't say, oh, just because this deck hasn't been winning a lot, it's going to be okay. We're going to keep it because it's not a good play pattern. And we don't want people like winning on turn 3 and the removal check on turn 2. I think the same is true of Karn. I've seen a lot of people with Karn be like, oh, mono green, like they're only 4% of the meta now. They're like the 5th most played deck. They're not the top of the format anymore. No, that card's miserable. That card's horrible. It's like such a like just cheat code to having whatever you need every time and also randomly hitting on your opponents. It's like, I know I'm super biased when it comes to Karn because it's like one of my least favorite cards in existence in older formats. I'm thrilled to see it gone. I get what Krim's saying, and you're probably right about Nykthos. I always defend Nykthos because I'm biased there too because I love like mono black devotion, mono red devotion, like the janky devotion decks. But you are right that it's just going to keep getting broken. And I think sooner or later, they're probably going to have to ban that one too. But I'm glad Karn is gone. I'm
away with it.
Maybe Wizards thought Nykthos was from Lord of the Rings. That's the only thing that makes sense. They thought it was a Lord of the Rings card. So what about Pauper? Any thoughts on? I don't think do any of us even play Pauper. So
I don't know anything about Pauper. Let me read about it real quick.
Yeah, let's.
We gotta read Gavin's full video and article. I will say so. all the other formats, it looks like random stuff is happening. It feels like one of our podcasts, right? Where we're like, is fun the criteria? I don't know. We just make things up. Like, grief is fun. It doesn't matter, but Karn is not fun. Karn gets the axe. There's a little paragraph of like just random, possibly like not consistent stuff for each format. And then Pauper gets its own like tome from Gavin, like explaining like of every little detail of like the single Monastery Swiftsphere band. So we don't know much about Pauper, but you can read the full article from Gavin, which goes into much detail about why Swiftsphere is banned. I wish it did this for all formats. I wish Gavin cared about the other formats.
Yes, they handle banning so incredibly well on Pauper. So like, hats off to them, like Gavin, the whole team that does the bannings. They're the community group. I forget what they call it, but they do it so well. They communicate it so well. Although I will say, like, this ban article for the other formats, way better than the last one. This is actually like kind of in depth and it mentions every format. So I think they learned from the last one that was just like no changes by play boosters, I think is what the like the two sentences were. So they learned from the reaction to that one. They also mentioned, if you read the whole article about Pioneer, they mentioned they're going to actively start banning it. They said it's been a year and a half since we banned anything. Our plan is to take a more active role managing Pioneer. They also made it clear that stuff can get banned in non-standard formats, any BNR update. There's no more like emergency bans or whatever. That's pretty much just for standard. Like once a year is the goal for standard. But in older formats, any BNR with any set release, they can ban whatever they want to. So that lasted about 6 months. We made it through a good 6 months of the once per year banning.
Ignore Richard,
whatever they're saying. The first podcast we talked about this, you said exactly this, and you were dead on.
Emergency standard ban next week incoming. Just watch. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, who's gonna sit around and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, guys. We're gonna let our business tank because we said this thing in an article a year ago, and we're beholden to it." Like, no, right? They're gonna do whatever they need to fix the formats.
So that is one thing. I wanted to ask, do you think anything in standard should go right now?
They said no changes. That's the official
They
answer.
said no changes. But I'm curious if any of y'all think there's anything that needs to be banned. Not if you like the card or dislike the card, Seth, before you scream Shealdred.
I haven't played standard since. Whoa. Is there something currently obnoxiously annoying?
So the part that annoys me is something that I don't think cards should be banned for, which is just like getting tired of the same old cards because we didn't have rotation this year. So for me, like, I get tired of Rafine. I get like, I've just seen it so many times, but I don't think anything like is ban worthy, right? Like, personally, with my biases, I would like to see things banned just to like shake it up and see different cards at the top of the meta. But I think overall, like, standards in a pretty healthy place. I will say, like, Domain and Esper, I think are probably the top two decks right now, or the decks I play against most, but neither one of them I think is oppressive at this point. So I would say, like, yeah, I would prefer to have more rotations and so forth. But as far as just where the meta's at today in the world we live in today, I don't think we need any bannings. What about you, Krim? Is there something you were thinking needs to change?
You know, as I look at the format and all that, and having played it a lot, I think it's actually really good. I think it's absurdly healthy right now. I think it's pretty fun. It's not, War of the Spark. It's not, like cons or anything like that. But it is a pretty darn fun format. And I was just curious because, they're like outside of the cards that should have rotated, right? And even with those cards that should have rotated still in the format, I don't even think any of those cards are problematic. I find it funny that you're tired of those cards already, but okay with getting hit with like Nykthos every other week for as long as you have. But like for me, like an extra year of Rafine and all that. And before anyone asks, no, I don't even play Rafine. I mean, I do for content, but I don't actually like care enough about Rafine. And a lot of these cards, I don't know. I mean,
it's taking up your Void Rend slots. You need Void Rend in the drop slot.
Exactly. Yeah, see? If you just had the universal solvent, maybe therein lies the problem, right? Like if things rotated, I wouldn't get to Void Rend things. I had some listeners of the podcast come by my stream and said that I wish I could love something as much as you love Void Rend.
And I think we've seen like an impact of some new cards, right? Grim, we've seen like the 2-drop vehicle is seen play all over the place. We've seen Tishana's Tidebinder, some of the 1-drops, the flying 1-drop that makes a map is seeing a lot of play. So we have seen, like, we haven't seen a full scale shakeup. Esper's still at the top of the meta. The Atraxa deck still at the top of the meta. But we have definitely seen, I think we've seen more of an impact from Lost Caverns of Ixalan than we saw from Wilds of Eldraine. So I think that gives me a little bit of hope moving forward that I think we actually have seen a bit of a shakeup. At least Dinosaurs, they haven't really broken out as like a top tier deck, but people play them on the ladder, and sometimes they play the 6/6 for 3 on turn 2 and they kill you really quickly. Like, yeah, that can Fight Rigging has made a comeback because of that card and the ancient one. So there's a lot of new stuff going on. Standard actually, I think, is in a really good place.
We're talking Standard has Voldaren thrill-seeking dinosaurs.
Yes.
I'm just saying. Like if that doesn't sound like a good time, I don't know what is. And I even I played that, right? Like it was just funny. But like another thing is Sheoldred, is it even that good anymore? Right? I mean, yes, it's still very good, but like it is significantly gone down in numbers.
It has. It's still, I think, the most played creature, but that's something like closer to 30% of decks now when it was like around 60% of decks at its peak. So it's definitely, and we've seen less copies of it, I think, as well. Like less decks playing 4 Sheoldreds, more decks playing like a Sheoldred or maybe 2 Sheoldreds. So I think Sheoldred has, it's normalized to an extent, and we got a little bit of the same problem of like Esper being the top deck of the meta, kind of like we were talking about with the scam decks in Modern, like how much of it's Bowmasters and how much of it is Bowmasters is in the scam deck, which is a huge percent of the meta. But Sheoldred, I think its metagame percentage gets inflated a little bit just because a lot of Esper decks play like 1 copy, and that's the most popular deck right now. So I would agree with you that like compared to 6 months ago, Sheoldred's not a problem. It's still an incredibly strong creature, but I think like we need to ban it or something is like, I don't think that's on the table at this point. I think it's normalized enough that it's a very good card and still one of the best creatures in Standard, but not a problematic card like it was at its peak. All right, let's, any other thoughts on bannings before we hit up a couple of other topics real quick at the end of the podcast? Okay, so moving on, we're heading into next spoiler season. Actually, I believe a week from tomorrow, or maybe from today. I mean, I'm not sure if it's Tuesday or Monday, actually, but they're going to be spoiling Ravnica Remastered, which comes out, I believe, February or the end of January. But we got a little sneak peek. There's going to be serialized cards in the set. They showed off Niv Mizzet Perun Steam Vent, so presumably all the Shocklands, Birds of Paradise, all X of 500. Richard, how much does this matter? Have serialized cards lost their coolness at this point because they come up every set? Are these like hyped expensive things, or just is it normal now, like full art lands? Like everything's serialized, so nothing's serialized.
I was gonna ask you, Seth, since you are an old border connoisseur, old border Steam Vents in foil. They showed new art, and then there's a XXX of 500 stamp on it. Does that ruin the aesthetic of
having it be serialized?
Like do you like if suppose they were actually worth the same price monetarily, which one would you actually rather play with? Wouldn't you just choose the non-serialized one like every time because the serialization kind of
it covers part of the art? Like it does.
You have to have a 69 of 500 or something, right? But just random number, I think, ruins it. So I don't like it. I think they look weird. I don't know why Steam Vents looks like this. Like it just makes my mind hurt when I see cards that are old bordered that aren't supposed to be. So I don't know. We were looking at this. People still care about serialized cards though, right, Seth? Like serialized cards still demand a high premium.
They still do compared to their normal versions, and it's mostly scarcity. Like there's only 500 in existence. That means these are super, super scarce compared to normal versions. But there is a huge premium where even the bad ones, like the I randomly opened a serialized Journeyer's Kite from Brothers War, which is like about as bad of a serialized card as you can get. Like no one plays that card anymore, not even in Commander, and it's still worth like 60 or $70. Oh, it used to be good. That used to be a staple like 10 years ago. That's like old school Commander staple. Do you still play it, Grim?
Seth. I have Hirobi serialized.
Ooh, oh, okay. That
Yeah,
might be
I
about
have
as
the
bad as a
worst.
Schrodinger's guide, actually. Yeah.
I have the worst serialized card of all time.
But even
No,
that, like the bad ones are still like 50, 60, $70. They're still like valuable. And the good ones are hundreds or thousands of dollars. So people still care. People do still care. But I think it's mostly the scarcity. They're just super rare.
I mean, yeah.
So, I mean,
trading card game collectability, you know, like for me, it doesn't matter to me, right? Like it doesn't bother me at all. It's like I don't care for it, but that's because as much as I love collecting things, I don't collect it for scarcity. I like collecting things like, oh, I want to own every Nico Bolas or whatever, right? I don't care which version. I just want artworks, right? So, you know, whatever, move the goalposts for everybody in their collections. But a lot of people in collecting games or collector card games love the scarcity of it, right? It's cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me personally because I don't care about it. Now, if they did something where I had to like, oh, this card is only available in its like serialized form, then I would probably care a lot more. So for me,
what if it was
doesn't
unique
bother.
art, Crim? So like, here's the problem with the Steam vents, right? Like the normal Steam vents in the set is probably gonna look the same, right? Like Birds of Paradise, that's the same Birds of Paradise art I've seen like forever. Same with Niv Mizzet. What if they made brand new Birds of Paradise art and only put it on these 500 cards? Like, isn't that
was anime.
what you... And it was animated. Like, isn't that what you actually want? Because you're like, this is one of 500 Birds of Paradise. Like, well, actually, there's like literally like 50 billion Birds of Paradise with the exact same art and border floating around. Like, what if they actually made them unique? Like, this had unique art and can only be on this like 500 cards.
Don't give them that idea. Don't give.
Isn't that what they should
that
do?
would make it? That would
Don't
make
give
it
them that
chase.
idea.
That would make
That
it
would.
chase, right?
If you told me the anime art of like a Birds of Paradise, I don't know what is that, a Birds of Paradise in a sailor outfit, like
yeah, smothering tither. You slap it on here.
yeah,
It'll fit.
yeah, slap that on there. Then I'm listening, right? But like, I hope they don't ever do that. I hope they don't ever do that because variant artworks
Isn't
are
that
already...
what you want though? The base version of the card is Birds of Paradise. You get anywhere, and the special version, like Lord of the Rings movie art cards or whatever.
Yeah.
What if they were all serialized? X of 500, right? And
See,
then
that
if you
would've
want this
been...
wild art, X of 500, go for it. Otherwise, you get to play this normal person, normal bordered version of the card.
But they already did a good job with this. So example, like Orcish Bowmaster's base set, sure. Then there's Orcish Bowmaster's full art. Now, if imagine, like, now you just add full art plus serialized on top of that. That's fine, right? But as long as there's a version of it where I don't have to care about serialized.
To me, this version, it's just so lazy, isn't it? Like, it reminds me of the thing we were talking about a few weeks ago of the, like, borderless versus non-border, like extended border. Like, they look exactly the same. The art's exactly the same. Other than, like, erasing the border, it's like the same card. Like, you want your special versions to be more special. And I think this kind of, like, calls back to the same thing. Like, yeah, it's cool that you slapped X of 500 on there, but otherwise, this looks just like the one I'll get out of my pack that costs $10 or something instead of $1,000. So I would like to see more of that. Maybe you don't got to do it anytime, but I do wish Wizards would experiment more with that. I wish the special versions were... There's another thing I learned from, like, seeing you with the One Piece cards. Like, just Richard showing me some of the cards. The special versions are like, wow, so obvious. Like, I opened something super cool. When these, you're like squinting. Does that have the number down there? Is that serialized? Like, I don't know. Otherwise, it's just normal foil. Like, how do you even know?
So the One Piece thing is like they did a manga panel background, right?
Yeah.
That's the big fancy, right?
See, something like
and
that
like,
would be maybe
like
not
it
exactly
looks
that, but
special.
that idea.
It feels special. This is just like, I don't know. There's a number
Like,
there. It's worth something now.
I didn't even know it was the game in it. I knew it was special. I know nothing about One Piece or the game, and I could tell it was a special version just because it looks so much different. So I hope we trend more that direction. Also, what do you think of that set symbol? I feel like Wizards is really slacking with their set symbol game lately. They try to do...
How many ways can you draw Ravnica? We've done this so many times. Like, what do you want them to do?
I actually didn't see the set symbol. Let me take a look at that.
They need to learn the thumbnail lesson. How you do this really cool thumbnail for your YouTube video and you don't remember that everyone's going to see it in like this little tiny size. And then when you see it in the mini size, like none of the detail is cleared. You can't tell. To me, this looks very just like a weird blob. I guess it's supposed to be Ravnica. And if I zoom in, I'm like, oh, like that's a window and so forth. But when you look at it like in the small size, to me, it's just like a random blob of gold on those cards.
It
I
does
have
look
a question for you
Ravnican.
guys.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys recognize any set symbol? Like if I give you a random set symbol, what are the odds that you'll know what set it's from? Because for me personally, 10 years ago, 100%. Maybe even 6 years ago, 100%. Now it's like 2%. I'm like,
Ooh.
I don't know. Is
Yo,
this
can we-
Aftermath
Ooh.
Commander? Like what is this? Like I don't even know what this is anymore.
Can we
Like,
can we do that as a segment? Like who's that Pokemon? But and we'll just
You
have
guys
Seth
think
do
you'd
the
score high?
voicing. I don't know. I don't know. I'd love to try though, right? Like that seems actually kind of fun. What set is that?
I think I do good. I do good with the base sets, like the standard sets. I don't know about like Commander though. That might get me. The Commander ones might get me. Maybe we do got to do that as a segment sometime.
that
a
would
little,
be
a
a
little
really
quiz to see
fun-
who knows the set symbols.
Yeah.
It's definitely worse than it was a few years ago. That's for sure. Like I'm like you 5-10 years ago, 100%. Now I actually don't know. It might be a lot worse than that.
I think mainline set, I'd probably pick up all the symbols like you had mentioned. The Commander ones are the ones where I'd probably, because they're all pretty similar. With they definitely don't look like
every time we go to
stand out.
Ravnica, you need two symbols, right? You need the normal symbol. You also need the commander symbol, and then maybe a masterpiece symbol if you're gonna do something like that. And we've been to Ravnica like 8 million times. Like, how many more ways can they represent Ravnica? And this is what they've got.
You don't like this current set symbol? Like it looks like the castle.
I think it's meaningless to me because I
guild-
can't even tell you what the other Ravnica symbols look like anymore. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it matters anymore because I can no longer identify sets based on set symbols.
Like I guess yeah, maybe, but I still remember the set symbols and how they look, and I dig this one, right? Like it feels very Ravnican because if you think about 3 Ravnica, 3 Furious, the last one, Ravnica Tokyo Drift, the third, I like that set symbol looks kind of like a castle, right? And the first Ravnica is the castle, like the middle point, and then the last set is kind of like the current one. I don't know. I like it. I like it.
It looks like a
cool.
sand castle to me.
Sure. Yeah. What kind of castle it is up to you, but I think it looks cool. However, I will say though, I think you mentioned like the border should be cooler and whatnot, like something fancier. I do agree with that. I think that the gimmick here though is that it's old border, and personally, okay, think of my love for anime art and like Phil's love for old border. I feel that same level of intensity, but of disdain for old border.
Wow, really?
So
Old
I
Border hater.
actively despise old border.
Oh, see,
I don't
hate
don't
Old
care
Border.
for it. I do not care for it. I see old border, I immediately ignore it. Like to me, like the Ravnica spoilers are just like an amoeba of like, yes, it's like a Rorschach test to me.
All right, so I think that's all of our topics for today, but that's good news because it means we got a few minutes to answer some fish mail. So, Richard, why don't you take it away?
All right. If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air. Drew Gardner. This one is mostly for Krim. From a fellow Kings fan, how do you feel about our chances to win the in-season tournament, and does it actually feel any different? I think it feels higher stakes.
So the that's funny because I actually had this discussion about the in-season tournament. So for context, they've made it so now there's the NBA Finals, right? But they've wanted to make it so that people care and tune in more for the early part of the season, right? Why? Because like basketball is like 80 billion games, right? So this in-season tournament is like this early part of the season where you can play for a pretty big amount of money, and point differentials matter on how much you beat your opponents by. So like example, the Kings needed to either win or only lose by 11 to the Warriors, right? They chose the alternative. We'll just win it. How about that? And I like that, but that's also led to teams running up the score, which I also like because that's essentially crowd surfing the Karn and BMing the teams that you're beating. So I love the in-season tournament. I love the beat 'em by points. As for the Kings, they've looked way better this year. They click They're playing defensively. They're going for the ball after getting dumpstered by the Warriors, and Looney just like essentially becoming our pretty much sunning us because they like Looney just got every rebound. So I don't know. It just felt really good to see the Kings play better basketball this year. As for will they win? I think they could if they can get around the Pelicans, because randomly the Pelicans have hands. I didn't think the Pelicans would have that much of hands to beat you back to back. Otherwise,
team called the Pelicans. I've been out of the NBA for too long.
What happened? There's a bird team, Richard. You gotta like the birds, right?
That's Richard.
Well, there's a lot of bird teams in sports, but Pelicans.
No wonder why you watch football, right? No wonder why you watch the NFL. Yeah, New Orleans Pelicans. They are.
What team were they formerly, or were they a new team?
They've been Pelicans. They've been Pelicans for a while. There's Kings. They were the Royals, but yeah,
like from. There was no New Orleans Pelicans when I watched Michael Jordan play, boys.
Where did they come from?
Were they like a new expansion team, or did some team just yoink up and leave?
I think Pelicans have been there. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong because timeline-wise, but like I swear the Pelicans have been there forever.
No. Okay,
you mean the Sonics?
They were the New Orleans Hornets starting in 2002. And then Hurricane Katrina happened. They temporarily went to Oklahoma City, and then they came back and became the Pelicans after they came back. Let me date myself.
What happened to the Charlotte Hornets?
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess you're right.
What happened here?
The Hornets have always been Charlotte to me, but that's because if you think about it, you were watching basketball the year before. If that was the case, you watched it before I got into it, because I got into it in 2003.
Oh, yeah, that would be the season that the Pelicans became a team. They brought you in. Actually, has this tournament made you watch more? Like, did it work?
Yeah.
Did there a scheme to get people more involved? Actually, I haven't watched more because of it, but that's cool. It's working.
Yeah, like they've essentially made it so that, hey, you don't care about just top 8 now. You care about the Swiss, right? And I really like that. It definitely has made me care a lot more, and I've kind of watched all the Kings games already, but now you don't really care about other teams unless they're directly a division rival or at the finals, right? Or in the playoffs and stuff like that, right? But now I actually care about where the other teams fall in the in-season tournament. So for me, I think I like that they've added stakes. The one thing I would say is I wish they made it even more like valuable and relevant in the early half. Like the lump sum of money is cool. I like that. I dig it. It's very innovative. Although I guess the thing that's in question is that some people think that ruins the integrity of the game, because if you're already winning, it feels bad that you have your starters out there still dunking on the like still running up that scoreboard. But I don't know where all these people are coming from. Have you not played NBA 2K?
Yeah,
have you not had to deal with that high schooler that would just trash talk on the mic after they're like ahead by 100 points? Why not?
All right, one more question from Verdant Farce. A page for the metagame of a new format magically appears on MTGGoldfish. What deck, if you saw it on the metagame page, would make you instantly interested in the format, knowing nothing about how the format works?
If it is a new format that we don't
brand
have
new
now.
format, what deck would make you? Okay, what is it, Grim?
Chase the Mind Sculptor.
Something with Jace. I mean, for me, it's got to be a Blood Moon deck. Some sort of Blood Moon deck. I see that showing up at the top of the meta.
That's called Scam, Seth.
No, that's not a Blood Moon deck. That doesn't count.
Oh, magical 8-ball Richard. I shake violently. Where can I play Jace the Mind Sculptor? Try again.
In the same format as me, Krim, because Liliana of the Veil would top my format with Tarmogoyf. We're talking about the downs of Tarmogoyf, but Lily is like unplayable. Tarmogoyf still sees play. Lily unplayable in modern. I guess we get unplayable in standard too still. But
hey, it's played every now and then. It's a nice niche card.
Hit me with the 1-2 punch of Tarmogoyf into Liliana, and we'll see you there.
That's in standard right now, right? Or Tarmogoyf into Liliana, you can do it. You should try some standard.
You should just play standard.
But
Souls of the Lost? No. Souls of the
Lost
is like super Tarmogoyf.
It's actually pretty good in modern too. But
Dude, it gets big.
I
I'm not
laughed
even
at that card when I
joking.
first saw it, but then it was like hitting me for like 8 or something. I'm like, oh boy, it's actually just better than Tarmogoyf. I know, no weird jank we want to see.
To be honest with
What if
you,
like
Panharmonicon.
persistent petitioners or whatever
No.
was a tier 1 deck?
is
that-
Jace
I
the Mind
mean,
Sculptor not jank in the current?
Door to nothingness. That would anything like that would get me some janky alt win con. Yeah, I guess Jace
That-
kind of is that.
Jace
Is
is a
Jace an
janky-
against odds card now? Maybe
He is.
Jace is an against odds card now.
Well, I mean,
Like
the One
Jace-
Ring is just Jace but better. So yes,
Right.
True.
right.
Right. like cool, very cool pet card you brought to the table here. This Jace the Mind Sculptor. Like Jace feels like playing if I showed you Shadow Mage Infiltrator in current day. Right? Like
No, it's
Hard
not
was a house.
that bad, is it? It can't be that bad.
Jace is pretty bad.
Jace is
No.
bad, dude.
You also get Bowmasters for fun now by Brainstorm.
Y-
too.
Yeah, that is also true.
worse than a ball, worse than a blood break. Like, yeah. Oh my god. Look, it pains me to say this right now because I am Jace fanboy 1. Yeah, he sucks. He's like awful. That's why I think he should be added into standard, where he can then be okay.
I don't
Like just okay.
I don't even know he'd be good at standard.
Yeah,
you do
look.
have shoulder. It's like the blood brain
Oh,
problem where there's a direct counter sitting there for you, so you can't do anything until that counter is gone.
Brainstorm
Like you have shoulder in the
makes-
format. You can't brainstorm
I-
while that's
I
there.
can unsummon you though.
Hey, you can bounce it. Just bounce it.
Yeah.
Jace would be
Yes, you
good in
can.
standard. It would have to
Jace would be okay in standard.
I think it would be okay, probably.
The universal solvent exists, Seth. Voidrend.
There's no fetching to brainstorm yourself into a new hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is Voidrend.
So if you have further questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 462 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard Greb, thanks for hanging out. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have a lovely week, everyone. And this is a crew signing out.